This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Kuf Vav. All the learning should bring an incredible refuah shlema to Chadvalei Basaradina Shmo Yosef and Yerfid Shmo Ben Tilan Vazim Bechaletz Lucham Basriva Sar Blum Basmil Chaim Shishub Ben Malko Shavigu Shulchana Besoil Shar Chali Yisrael Zvaz Chushalim Zalchaim and Devar Tamzim Basarach Shalom Levizav V'Metali Shemechaya B'Mimudid Basima Malka. They should all find the Shidduch Chagoin V'Karei. Then we begin a new parak today on Daf Kuf Vav. On Daf Kuf Zayin, excuse me, I don't know why we said Kuf Vav. We begin a new parak today on Daf Kuf Zayin, and today's parak, in which we already see from the fifth word of the parak, is all about mi'un. What is mi'un? The first Rashi, before we even begin, the Gemara teaches us that we have a Yesaima. We have a girl whose father was nifter, and what happened? Her mother or brother married her off, and that marriage is a din derabana that they can marry her off, and part and parcel with the din derabana that the mother and brother can marry off this yesaima is that she has the ability to do mi'un. What is mi'un? She has the ability to walk out of the marriage if she chooses. If she decides that this marriage is not for her, she's allowed to say sayonara and she can walk out. Now we're going to see actually in a moment exactly how mi'un works, but that is the basic concept. With that understanding, let's right away begin the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Beishame oimrim ein mimanin ela arusos. Says Beishame, this entire concept of mi'un, this concept that a girl is able to walk out of a marriage is only if she did erusin, which of course is the first half of marriage. No, arusa is nesuos, even if they didn't nesuin. Machlek is number 2 in the Mishnah. The entire creation of mi'un is walking out of a marriage on the husband, but not on a potential yibum situation. Number 3, you could only do this in front of the husband. Says Beis Hillel, no. Beis Hillel b'fanav shaloi b'fanav. Beis Shammai number 4, b'vezin. If you go to bezin, Beis Hillel b'vezin v'shaloi b'vezin. Amru lahem Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says Beis Hillel to Beis Shammai, mima'enes v'hi ketano afilu dalid v'hei pamim. Says Beis Hillel, if they did mi'un and she's still a ketana, she's had to keep on doing mi'un once after another. She could get remarried and walk out of that marriage. Get remarried and walk out of that marriage even 4 or 5 times. Amrullah Beis Shammai responds, Ein benois Yisrael hefker, that's too much. The girls are not hefker. Ella, mema'enes, you do mi'un one time. Umamtenes, then she waits. Ad shetagdel, till she becomes a gedayla. V'timayin, and she does mi'un again. V'tinasi, and she get remarried again. So of course, just pointing out the last din in Beis Shammai, he said, she does mi'un. She waits to become of age, then she does mi'un again, and then she get remarried. Now, exactly what that means, she has to do mi'un 2 times, we're going to see. But the Gemara is now going to go one after another through all these machlekesim, trying to figure out what is this detail, what is the machlekes in Beis Shammai Beis Hillel with regard to mi'un. So says the Gemara, Amrav Yudam Rishma, my time at the Beis Shammai, where did Beis Shammai get his din? That mi'un is only from Meir Zilvish Ein Tenai B'Nesuin. You know where this comes from? This comes from a different din of Beis Shammai. This comes from the shita of Beis Shammai that he holds that you're never allowed to make a Tenai on stipulation with regard to Nisuin. And therefore, and if we would allow mi'un in a situation of nisuin, meaning if this girl not only does erusin, but consummates and does the marriage full-fledged with this person, and then she can walk out of it, you know what it's going to look like? It looks like there was a tanai. We see this girl, she's married to this man, they do erusin, they do nisuin, and then she walks out. So what does it look like? It looks like she's walking away from the marriage because it looks like there was a potential tanai, a stipulation, and that's why she was able to walk away. So because Beis Shammai holds there's no such thing as tanai in nisuin, therefore, says Beis Shammai, the concept of mi'un only works by erusin. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Let's say they went to Chuppah without Tashmish. What's the concern? The whole concern of Beis Shammai is that people are going to say that there's a Tanai by Nisuin. And so they ask the Gemara, but what if there's Nisuin, but they never slept together? What's the concern in that case? Says the Gemara, no, you know what the concern is? Because Beis Shammai also doesn't allow there to be Tanayim stipulations in Chuppah. Ask the Gemara further. What happens if the father gave over his daughter to the shluchim of the husband? What's the concern? Why would Beis Shammai not allow mion in this case? Explains the Gemara, good old-fashioned loy plug rabbanan. So really Beis Shammai is only concerned about nisuin, about chuppah. But in all cases of nisuin, even a nisuin in which it was done with a shliach, even there Beis Shammai says you cannot do mion. Ubeis Hillel. What does Beis Hillel respond? Explains Beis Hillel, says Beis Hillel, what are you so worried about, Beis Shammai? You're worried that people are going to say in a regular case of Nisuin you could have a Tanai. Says Beis Hillel, everyone knows that the whole creation of Nisuin is a din d'Rabbanan. Therefore, says Beis Hillel, there is no concern. Says the Gemara, that is pshat number 1 in the first part of the Mishnah. The first machlekes in the Mishnah, whether there is a din, a mean on the Nisuin or not. Rav Yehuda or Shmuel said pshat, because we're worried, says Beis Shammai, that people are going to think you could have a Tanai in Nisuin. Rabbi Rav Yosef, a second pshat, time to Beis Shammai, no while if you're not them, Oiseh, Bilasai Bilasnos. Says Rabbi Rav Yosef, you know what the problem is? If we allow this girl to walk out after Nisuin they were together, they slept together. What happens? That means retroactively, it makes all the times that they were together into Zanos. And therefore, no husband, no one will ever want to marry this girl. If he is worried that any day she could walk away, he's worried that, wait, anytime I'm sleeping with her, it could retroactively be called Zanos. And therefore, says Beis Shammai, we don't allow mian after Nisuin, or else no one will want to do Nisuin with this girl. Ask the Gemara, okay, same question. What happens if there was a chuppah without tashmish? There's no concern in that case. Explains the Gemara, to have a chuppah, the Yisura. No, the husband doesn't want that people should say, oh, he did a chuppah with one he was usher to, meaning if she afterwards walks out of it. Again, loy plug rabbanan. Beis Hillel, how does Beis Hillel answer these concerns? Says Beis Hillel, what are you worried about? Give on the ikon kedushin. Kesuba. Says Beis Hillel, I don't understand. This isn't Zanos. They're married. It's true. Maybe one day later on, 3 years down the line, this girl will walk out of the marriage. But doesn't retroactively make it a Zanos. They were married at the time. And therefore, there is no concern. We're not worried that people are going to refrain from marrying these girls. Rav Papa Amar comes in Rav Papa with a third explanation of the Mishnah. Time of the Beis Shammai, the Shamperi. You know what the problem of Beis Shammai is? The problem is the husband is concerned about the peiros. Not the husband. We'll see in a moment. Time of the Beis Hillel, Misham Beiri. They both are a din about the peiros. The Nichsei Malug, of course, is Nichsei Sain Barzel, which are the properties that the woman brings into the marriage. That's the dowry that's written into the ksuba, and that stays absolute. Then there's the Nichsei Malug, in which she brings into the marriage, and the husband's allowed to eat, and then she just gets back at the end of the day. So they're both concerned about the peiros. Time the Beis Shammai Beiri di Amr Nisua. If we're gonna say that if there is Nisuin Timan, you still do mion. Shabavachalo mina. The husband's gonna go and he's gonna eat up and deplete the entire value of anything that she brought into the marriage. Why? You know why? Because he's going to say she might just walk away. So the husband's not going to treat that which she brings into the marriage properly. He's going to say, I never know, this girl's 10 years old. Maybe next year she's going to run away from me. So I'm going to go and abuse all the things she brings into the marriage. She's going to eat all the produce, etc. And that's the reason why Beis Shammai says you cannot do mion after Nisuin. Beis Hillel says Beis Hillel the exact opposite concern. Since he says, wait, maybe she's going to do mion. He's going to treat the items very well. Why? Savar, because he thinks because he's worried that if he doesn't improve the properties, you know what's going to happen? Her relatives are going to come and take her away. Meaning, he's going to treat her very, very well so that she doesn't walk away. Beis Shammai's concern, says this third answer of Rabba, she might walk away, so therefore the husband's not going to treat the property well. Says Beis Hillel the exact opposite. Because he's nervous she might walk away, he's going to go and he's going to treat her super duper well, he's going to treat her properly extremely well, so that she does not want to walk away. And the fourth and final explanation of this first machlokes in the Mishnah, Rava Amar and the time to Beis Shammai, no one wants to have a whole ganze chasana and potentially waste it, and therefore says Beis Shammai, we don't allow mion after nisuin. What does Beis Hillel answer? Says Beis Hillel, no, it's not true. People like to party. Tarvayu nichli, husband and wife are happy. We've seen this, and we haven't seen this, but we all see this in the Gemara in Kedushin. Husband and wife like to be known as married people. So even if one day she walks away, they're still happy to spend the money so that everyone knows that they were married people. Four different explanations in explaining the first machlokes in the Mishnah, whether you're allowed to do miyan even after nisuin. Now we go into din and machlokes number 2 in the Mishnah. Beis Shammai Yomrim Bibal. Beis Shammai says the din of miyan is only by the husband. Beis Hillel said it's even by the yavam. Amar Rav Aishia, 4 lines from the bottom. Says Rav Aishia, the concept of miyan only talks to maimer, only talks to the kedushin derabanan of a yibum. However, it does not remove and uproot the zika, the connection between yavam and yevama. Amar Rav Chisda, my time Rav Aishia, where do you get this from? Maimer, so he explains, Timidaita matzia Maimer, which came about through her consent, therefore he can uproot it. Zika deval karcha, Zika happens on its own with the death of the brother. Loi matzi akra, you cannot uproot that. Says Imar, really? We all know that the halach of Yibam is you're allowed to be together. The husband, the Yavam, is allowed to be Bayal or Bal Karcha, and yet Umati Akra, and yet he's able to uproot that by doing Miyon. So obviously it doesn't have to do with whether it's Bal Karcha or Midaita. So rather, says the Gemara, Nubshat, Ela Bio Maimer de Huka Avid. The bia, the mimer, comes through the husband, through the yavam, so that he could uproot. Whereas the zika, where does the zika come from? The zika comes from God. The zika happens automatically that you cannot uproot. Ula Amar comes like Ula, and he says, going back to what Rav Aishia said on the bottom of an Aleph, said Ula Mion can even uproot the zika. My taima nesua kama ka'akra. Because what does Mion do? Mion undoes the original nesuin. Now when this woman, again, this woman is married to Reuven, and Reuven dies. And now she falls to Yibam, to Reuven's brother Shimon. If this woman goes and does Mion, she effectively undoes the marriage to Reuven. And therefore, by default, the Zika falls away. And this is how Ula argues on Rav Aishia. Ask the Gemara, someone is able to me and does not. The co-wife does chalitza, not yibam. Says the Gemara, why? Why do you do yibam right now? According to you, Ula, you just designed and invented something incredible. You just invented that you could even do yibam after the death of the husband. So why in this case don't you do yibam now and uproot everything to start? And get rid of the original yibam, the original marriage, and then v'tisyabin saras, and let the Sarah do yibam. Explains the Gemara, Saras Erva shiny. No, Saras Erva is different. In that case, you cannot uproot the entire thing from the beginning. Titani Rabbi Choskel, where do we see this from? Mian Abibal, Mutar Saviv. If someone does Miyam in the husband, it undoes the marriage, and then she's allowed to marry her ex-husband's father. Yavam, but if he has miyah to the yavam, asur la'aviv, there still remains some traces. So even though in a regular marriage, when the wife does yibam, what happens? It severs and it unroots and undoes everything, so much so that she can even go and marry that ex-husband's father, but that's only by a marriage and not by a yibam. Alma, what do we see? B'shas nefila nears kichalasai, hachanam b'shas nefila nears kisaras bitoi. Says the Gemara, when it comes to yibam, it's slightly different, because at the time of the nefila, it looks like an erva, even though she subsequently did miyan and uprooted the whole thing, but still that disallows them from getting married. Says the Gemara, let's go into this din of Ula. This din of Ula, in which Ula taught us that the mian could uproot the marriage, even, we'll call it retroactively, even after the death. So Amar Rav comes like Rav and he teaches us, mi'ana bezeh asura lazeh. If the Yevama did mian to one brother, she's asur to the other brothers. Why? Just like case of get. In the case of Yibam, if one of them gives a get, the loch is your asr to all the brothers. That's what Rav holds. But Shmuel argues, Shmuel Amar mi'ana bezeh. You do Yibam, it uproots the whole thing and you're mutter to the brother. Why? What's the equation? By the get, he gave the get. Over here, it's being done by her. The Amrad, because she says, Lo re'ina bach, lo savina bach, lo savina, lo re'ina bach, lo savina bach, I don't want you, I don't desire you. Kachud lo re'ina, and explain Shmuel what she's saying. I don't want this guy. Habechavrach re'ina, but the brother I do want. So Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, if after Mion she could go and marry the brother. And a third opinion, Rav Asi Amar mi'ana bezeh mutares, afilu lo, she's mutter even to him. Says the Gemara, Lema ki Rav Aisha svirlu. Let's say the Rav Asi, this third opinion, that said after Mion she can even go and remarry that person. Maybe he holds like Rav Aisha Damar Eina Mimaenes Lizikasai, that the Mion cannot uproot the Zika, and therefore, says Rav Asi, if you do Mion, you're still bound, and you still have to marry that brother. Explains the Gemara, no, it's not the same thing as Rav Aisha. Why? Because according to Rav Asi, when there's only one brother, Rav Asi holds that the Mion could indeed uproot the Zika. And if there's one brother and she does Mion, she would then be answered to him. But it's a different case. And that's the reason. So Rav Asi is not saying the same thing as Rav Aisha. He's agreeing that really Mion does uproot the Zika, but only when there's one brother. They didn't admit to him. What does that mean? Says the Gemara in the first white line. Amar Abaya Rav Rav Amar Rav Aisha, Ba'amila Rav Asi. Three different ways of learning. And now we go into the third machlokes in our Mishnah. Beishami Aimrim, that whereas Mian performed bifanav, in front of the husband, whereas Beisil said no, it does not have to be done in front of the husband. Tani, we learned in a Bryce, Amar Lam Beisil Beishamai, says Beisil, who says it does not have to be done in front of the husband. To Beishamai, v'haloi pisha nagamal mi'ano ishtoi sheloi bifanav. There was a story with Pisha Nagadol, that was Pisha the camel driver, and he did mion not in front of her husband. Amr Lem Beishamai, the Beisel says Beishamai, Pisha Nagadol v'mida Kefusha Modad. Pisha Gamal did not do the right thing. Why? Because Pisha Gamal was eating up all of his wife's property. Lefikach, because Pisha Gamal was acting inappropriately and incorrectly with his wife's properties. Madula b'mida Kefusha. They dealt him a difficult arm. They dealt him a measure that was inverted as well. Meaning they allowed his mion to work even shalei b'fanav in order to save his wife. So explains Beishamai that really the mion has to be done in front of the husband. But because in this case, the husband acted incorrectly, we allow the wife's mion to be done not in front of him. Says the Gemara, 1 second. We see over here that Pishan was eating the peiros. Sounds like they were nesuos. But Beishamai said you can't do nesua. You can't do mion in a case when there's nesuin. So why in this case is Beishamai agreeing there is mion? Trekatari of the ba. Says the Gemara, no. There's two issues, meaning they nailed Pishan for two reasons. According to Beishamai, it's true. You're normally not allowed to do mion by nesuin. But over here, because this person Pishan was acting incorrectly, they number one allowed mion even though there was ready nesuin, and number two they even allowed her to do mion shaloi b'fanav, not in front of the husband. Says the Gemara, the fourth and final machlekes in the Mishnah, Beishamai Oimrim b'fnei Bezdin. Beis Shammai, excuse me, not the final. The fourth machlekes in the Mishnah. Beis Shammai says it has to be done in front of Bezdin. Beis Hillel says not. Tanan also we learned in the Mishnah chalitza v'amiyun b'shloisha has to be in front of 3 people. Man Tanu, who's the Tanu of this Mishnah? Amar Rabba Beis Shammai. Abai Amar Aviladim Beis Hillel. What did Beis Hillel mean in our Mishnah? He meant you don't need a Bezdin Momachin. Avol Shloisha Bina and Kedetani was learned in a Brayz Beishamim of Nei Bezdin, Beisalayim of Nei Bezdin, Vishalayim of Nei Bezdin. Veil Maidim Shazarach Shloisha. Everyone agrees you need 3. It's just a question of do you need Bezdin Momachin real day on him. Rav Yossi Bar Yehuda, Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, Machshirim Bishnayim. They say you can even do it in front of 2 people. Or Rav Bar Menunia, or Rav Nachman Halacha, Concise Zog, like Rav Yossi Bar Yehuda and Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, that you could do Miyah not even in front of 3, you can even do it in front of 2. And the final machlekes the Mishnah Beis Shammai Aimim Timai, it says Beis Shammai she could do Miyah again and again 4 or 5 times. And Beis Hillel said she could do Miyah 4 or 5 times. And what did Beis Shammai answer? No way, you do it once, wait till you get older to become a Gedailah, do Miyah again and then get married. Says the Gemara V'Amiyana. The Gemara hones in on the words of the Mishnah. It sounds like she does Miyan. She becomes the Gedailah, and then she does Miyan again. Ask the Gemara, why do you have to do Miyan again? She already did Miyan once. No. Says Shmuel Beis Shammai holds when she grows up, she has to say, I wanted my original Miyan Arishainim. Ulamar, second dar is Tarti Gatani. Teach goes 2 dinim. Either, says Ula, what could she do? She could do Miyan, wait till she grows up, and then do Erisin. Or she could do Miyan, and then she could do Nisuin right away. According to the words of Ula, the words of the Mishnah make sense. Says the Gemara, you're right. According to Shmuel, the words in the Mishnah are a little bit difficult. We'll begin the Mishnah and then we'll call it a day. Says the Gemara Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Zayin and Beis. What is this case of a ketana that needs to do Miyan before remarrying? If the mother or brother, as we spoke out from the first Rashi in the Perek, as we began today's year, if the mother or brother married her off to her das, then she has to do Miyan before remarrying. But let's say the mother or brother married off this minor, this ketana, and she does not mask him, and she doesn't do Miyan, she is allowed to just walk out of the marriage. If a girl cannot watch her kedushin, she doesn't need Miyan. It means the marriage was nothing to start off with. No, the actions of a ketana are nothing. Ella kimafuta. Only it's like a case of mefuta, it's like a case of seduction. And therefore, she can't eat chuma of her husband because they're not like they're married. Israel, she can still eat chuma from her father's house because it's not like she is married. If she is staying by this husband because of him, then they're like married. If not, it's not like they're married. And this last cryptic line will explain in tomorrow's Shir, Amir Hashem.